Hey guys, this unit we are going to be studying probability. So this video is going to introduce probability and go over some key terms that you need to know when we study probability. So make sure you take notes. All right, so first thing, we have a bag of marbles here. There's only 6 in there. And I ask you to reach in and select a marble for the bag, or out of the bag. So the first thing, when you actually select a marble, randomly selecting a marble, that is called an experiment. So an experiment is an activity with different results. You can get varying results. So when I select a marble, I could get orange, yellow, blue, yellow, red, or purple. The experiment part is actually doing that. Then I might ask you, well, what are the possible outcomes for our experiment? Outcomes are the possible results that you might get. So I could get a yellow, I could get a red. So outcomes are each marble in the group. Those are the possibilities I could get. I could get a yellow twice, or blue, red, orange, purple. Those are called the outcomes. All right, and the next word is an event. An event is like a specific question I'll ask you. So I might say, what are your chances of getting a yellow marble? Okay, that's the event. That's what I'm kind of asking about. All right, so selecting a yellow marble, that's the event. And then I might ask you, well, what are the favorable outcomes? So like, how many possible times could I get yellow? Well, there are 2 yellow marbles in the bag, so there are 2 favorable outcomes. 2 times I could get yellow. There's only 2 yellow marbles in there. So that is some vocab words that you need to write down and make sure you know. All right, so we have a number cube. It's a normal dice. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 on it. So I want you to push pause, and I want you to try to answer these questions based on the vocab that you just learned. And then push play when you're ready to see the answers. All right, so first it asks you, what are the possible outcomes? Well, when I roll the dice, I could get a 1, I could get a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, or a 6. So those are all the possible outcomes I could get. The second question says, what are the favorable outcomes for rolling an odd number? So you have to think, well, what are the odd numbers I could get? Well, I could get a 1, I could get a 3, or I could get a 5. Those are the favorable outcomes for rolling an odd number. All right, then the last question says, what are the favorable outcomes of rolling a number greater than 5? Well, there's only one number greater than 5, so there's one favorable outcome for that, and that is the number 6. So this brings us to the definition of probability. Probability is the chance or likelihood of something happening or not happening. We use a number to measure probability, and that number is between 0 and 1 always. So I might ask you, if you look at this marble, what's the probability, this is kind of the notation, of getting a yellow? Okay, so usually I kind of look and I see, well, I see 2 yellow marbles, so I have 2 chances out of, there's 6 possible outcomes, so that would be 2 6. Now if you look at that number, I can simplify that. That's the same as 1/3. That number is between 0 and 1. It's a fraction. That's between 0 and 1. Now, sometimes you might see this probability also written as a decimal. Well, I know the decimal for that is 0.3 repeating, or a percent. So maybe they would round it to 33%. So probability, we're usually going to see written as a fraction, decimal, or percent. And remember, it's a number between 0 and 1. All right, so there is some vocab when we're working with probability, and 2 of those words are possible or impossible, which you guys have heard before. So if you look at this spinner down here, could you think of an event that is possible but not certain to happen? How about an event that is certain to happen? And then how about an event that would be impossible to happen on this spinner? All right, so I'll start with the first one. An event that is possible but not certain to happen. I could say, what's your probability of getting a 1 when you spin the spinner? Well, it's possible, but it's not certain that it will happen. Okay, for question 2, what's an event that is certain to happen? I could say, what's the probability of getting a 1 or a 2? Well, that's the only 2 options, so for sure I have to get a 1 or a 2. So that would be certain, or that would be, certain. What about an event that would be impossible to happen? I could say, what's the probability of getting a 3? That's impossible because there's not even a 3 on this spinner. All right, so when we are working with probability, I told you that probability is written as a number between 0 and 1. So we're going to see if we can kind of fill this in. Well, right between 0 and 1, I know that's 1/2. That would be the fraction. 1/2 is kind of like a 50-50 shot, right? So the vocab word that goes with that is called equally likely. That means you have an equal chance of it happening. You have a 50-50 shot. So 1/2 or 50%, okay, or 0.5, that is the probability for equally likely. All right, there's another vocab word called certain. Certain means, well, it's 100% going to happen. So certain would be way over here. If you know for sure it's going to happen, it has a probability of 1. If I wrote that as a decimal, it's still 1, or just 1.0. And then if I wrote that as a percent, it's 100%. All right, another word that you need to know is impossible. Impossible means there's 0 shot of it happening. Okay, so that would be way over here, 0. So the number for that on a number line is 0. The decimal is still 0, and then the percent is 0%. All right, now there are 2 other words that we're going to kind of fill in. One is likely. Likely means it's over half, more than half of a chance. So it would be more somewhere over here, maybe like 3/4. Okay, that's pretty likely. 5/6, something close to certain. And then unlikely would be over here, okay, on this part of the number line. Maybe that would be like 1/4, so you only have a fourth of a chance of it happening. So that would be more unlikely, or even closer to 0. So that would be things that are not likely to happen. You still have a little bit of chance, like winning the lottery. That's kind of unlikely, but it's not impossible. If you take a look here, I have that same kind of chart here, written here, and it just has some fractions, decimals, percents. So if you want to add anything to your chart in your notes, you can. All right, so now that you've seen this vocab, let's see if you can answer a couple questions. So I want you to pause the video and then write down, what do you think for each of these 5 scenarios? Do you think it's likely, unlikely, impossible, certain, or equally likely? Remember, equally likely means it's got like a 50-50 chance of happening. So go ahead and write down what you think. All right, so the first one, rolling a 7 on a dice. There usually is not a 7 on a dice, so that would be impossible. All right, number 2, rolling an even number on a number cube or a dice. Well, there's 3 even numbers, 3 odd numbers, so this would be equally likely. All right, number 3, winning a coin toss. Well, you have a 50-50 shot. There's heads and tails. So again, that would be equally likely as well. The Packers winning the NFC North. Well, I would like to think it's certain, but it's not certain. So you could say it's likely. That's what I would say based on our past results. But it probably is equally likely. And then the last one, Miss Oyen loving the Packers forever, or Miss Van Newland loving the Packers forever. Well, that is, of course, certain. 100% chance of that always being the case. So a couple vocab words that you can put in your notes. The first one is an impossible event. It's an event that has a probability of, the word you're going to fill in there is 0. Okay, so impossible events have a probability of 0, 0%, 0. A certain event means for sure it will happen. And that event has a probability of 1. Okay, that is 100%, but the number for it is 1.